Welcome to our latest Fireside Chat with Sandeep Kalra, CEO and Executive Director of Persistent Systems, and Chet Kapoor, Chairman and CEO of DataStax. What are the critical success factors for digital transformation? How has an overnight remote workforce challenged the key paradigms of work? What makes a great leader? These are some of the questions Sandeep and Chet address today. They also reveal how the open data stack and modernization can help businesses solve their biggest data challenges. Let's hear from the leaders of two of the fastest growing companies this year.
So Chet, thank you for joining us and welcome to our Fireside Chat. The goal here today is to talk about our perspectives, our journeys and learnings with the audience. So let's get started. So we have seen you evolve from Apigee to Google Cloud and now DataStax. Tell us a little bit more about your journey.
So spent a few years at Apigee. We built a company around APIs, and before APIs were a big thing, right? Google Maps was doing APIs. Twitter used to be an API company, and we thought it was really important for folks to do APIs along with what we're doing from a digital transformation point of view. So it was successful. It was great to build it from scratch. And then at Google, I was still at Apigee, and we did that for a couple of years. And then at the last part of my tenure at Google, I was focused on the education sector, which was great. Joined DataStax in October 2019. Saw a massive opportunity here. I was lucky enough to get a chance to play around with different things. Right, to being a VC, going and doing another large company, starting something from scratch. And I picked DataStax for 4 reasons, right? One was product market fit. Cassandra is, if you look at the triangle of skills versus number of developers, Cassandra is, really good on the top part of the triangle. The total addressable market, the TAM is massive, right? It's 7 billion going to 22 billion in 4 years. A great engineering team. Right, these are the people that build Cassandra, right? I mean, the most scalable available apps in the world run on Cassandra. But the last part was the most important part, which is durability, right? This is a Jeff Bezos word, but something about you have a P&L and a culture, and you bring them together to create a durable company that surpasses $1 billion in revenue. So that was the big criteria of joining. And it's been 18 months now at DataStax. Working very closely with large customers like FedEx, T-Mobile, Verizon, and others. And we're definitely shaping DataStax to be something more than what it used to be, but never ever forgetting our core, which is an open data product, right? And so it's been a blast so far.
Perfect. And we have seen your journey for the last few quarters, and we are equally excited to embark on the next stage with you.
I know it's by the way a blast to have a chance to work with you guys again. I know we did a lot of work at Apigee together and at Google, so it's great to now have an opportunity to do it at DataStax as well. So Sandeep, my turn to ask the question. You started at Persistent as the executive director and president in May 2019, and you became CEO in October 2020. It is a really interesting time to have taken over, right, as CEO. So tell us a little bit about your journey and especially how you led the company through the pandemic.
Nice. So as you rightly said, I joined Persistent in May 2019. Persistent is not new to me. I've watched Persistent from the outside for many, many years. Being in the same industry, competed at times with Persistent. I have a good respect for Persistent from the time I've seen it go public, grow sequentially pretty well. And when I was introduced to Anand Deshpande, I found it pretty intriguing, and finally I ended up joining Persistent. So as you rightly said, when I joined, I was responsible for roughly about 70% of our business, something called technology services. And we were growing very well till the time pandemic hit. And at pandemic times, nobody knew whether the revenues are going up, down. Everyone was worried about doing resiliency tests and so on. But thankfully, with pandemic times also came a lot of new learnings. Within a matter of 4 to 6 weeks, we saw the entire global workforce kind of transition from being, at offices to a new term called work from home. And all of a sudden, every one of the 11,000 plus people that we had globally were, scaling with networks being tested, security being tested. The customers who had basically said, thou shalt never work from outside the office premises, agreeing to work from home and wherever else. So we saw, not only on one side, we were protecting the business continuity of our customers, but on the other side, a number of customers wanted to scale their digital businesses pretty fast because no longer were the customers going to a bank, a physical bank. Everything was being done digitally. A lot of businesses that did this transition successfully were the ones that came through this very well. And this also helped us scale alongside, the customers that scaled. On the other side, it also gave a whole new meaning to leadership, a whole new meaning to empathy. We saw the COVID wave come first here in the US, followed by Europe, and then finally the COVID wave in India hit like nobody's business. So the way we rallied around our own teams, forming a set of volunteers in different geographies, we donated $3.3 million going to the communities we live in. We did a bunch of volunteer work to provide for medical facilities, buying supplemental insurances, and so on. So there were a whole lot of new learnings outside of business, while also scaling the business and working with partners such as yourselves. And interestingly, in these times, we came out winning. We are today the fastest growing company in our sector. We delivered the highest growth percentage. Last quarter for us was 20.3% year on year. And that was very handsomely rewarded in the financial markets as well. Today, our market cap is 4 times what it was pre-pandemic. Not even in pandemic times, pre-pandemic 4 times. And our performance overall globally in our sector is number 4 from a public market perspective. So from our employees' perspective, it has panned out well. We have done the resilience from our customers' perspective, scaled well with them, learned new leadership things, and worked and built partnerships like yourselves, where we have not even met people face to face. And I'm looking forward to a day when life becomes normal, which looks like will happen soon, and where we will have the same kind of businesses. So pretty much pandemic has been great, personally, professionally, great learnings.
This awesome. That's awesome growth, right? Congratulations. It's just a follow-up question for you, Sandeep. It's really interesting, right? You have a large number of employees in India, and you obviously have a lot of people that are here as well in Europe, all over the world. Has a lot of companies who don't do distributed working, and I'm specifically not using the word remote, right? This is new for them. You guys have obviously been doing it. It almost seems like from a pure productivity point of view, the pandemic was not an unnatural thing. Outside of the pain and suffering, it was not an unnatural thing from you for Persistent as a company. Is that fair?
Yeah, to a certain extent it's fair, but it also challenged some paradigms. While we were used to working in a different paradigm, having distributed teams all the time, but there are challenges. So just to give you a very small example, people in India are not used to working from home as compared to people here in the US. Here in the US, we have home offices. In India, that's a luxury. So, dealing with those kind of nuances, working around those kind of nuances with people, and even the customers scaled up. A lot of customers were very, very rigid before the pandemic. And there were extremely strong rules around security, firewall, and whatever else. And we saw entire teams come together. So there were some definite changes in these times.
That's awesome. I'm glad it continues to work itself forward. This is, by the way, again, congratulations on the great success.
Well, thank you. Now coming to your side. So, what are the challenges that you saw come in these COVID times? And have you seen your business accelerate because of the pandemic?
It has been, it's actually been phenomenal, right? Because if you just zoom out and think about the fact that the human touch was not allowed, right? That was the part that the pandemic said you cannot be close to people, but you still need to interact with your business partners, you interact with your people, you need to interact with your employees, you need to interact with your customers and developers and everything. And so how are you going to do that? You're going to do it digitally. Every company that was doing a digital transformation project accelerated. Everyone. The words I got from everybody was, our boards are now telling us to go 2x. Where I used to look for budget, I'm being given budget, right? And so the moment that happens, that's good because e-commerce increases, the use of Cassandra increases, and DataStax does much better because of it. Interestingly enough, it has helped even the companies that were not transforming, that were not focused on, they were not early adopters of doing digital transformation, have actually scaled up quite a bit. So it's been going really well for us. But independent of the pandemic, right? You've heard that data is the new oil, right? As someone would say. But, Louise from Macquarie Bank said something really interesting. He said data is the new plutonium, right? Extremely powerful if used correctly. But if not used correctly, it can blow up in your face, right? So data continues to double every 2 years. So the key to these times, right, is that data needs to be accessible, analyzable, and actionable, right? But along with this data explosion comes this massive two things, right? The TCO debt spiral, right? Because the data costs are exploding and your costs are exploding with it. And the second thing is, while you're doing that, you have this innovation stalemate because you have so much of old stuff that does not give you the agility you need to compete in today's market. So we've been trying to solve things on those two vectors, which is make sure we decrease the TCO significantly for our customers, like 5x, and increase developer productivity, right, by 5x. And that seems to be working really, really well.
Sounds good. We have all heard you talk about the open data stack. Can you talk to us a little bit more about how DataStax is helping and why this seems to be more important now than ever before?
So it's really interesting, right? If you look at the data world in two parts, right? There's a deep lane, which serves the analyst, right? It's the data scientist, whoever else might be. This is where Snowflake's, Databricks, all the Hadoop stuff, that all lives, right? These are large amounts of data that are serving specific people, right, who want to do something with it. And that, by the way, would be the old OLAP world. And then on the left-hand side is what we call the fast lane. The purpose of the fast lane is about serving the app, right? The developer takes everything in the fast lane and actually builds applications. So DataStax lives in the fast lane. What in the old world would have been called OLTP, but it is more than just transaction processing, right? So we think an open data stack is in the making, right? If you think about every new type of application, what we think now, it was web apps, it was LAMP. Now with the modern data app, we think you need an open data stack. And the open data stack has to have the following characteristics to it, right? It has to be cloud native. It has to be Kubernetes based. It has to be accessible by APIs, because this day and age, developers are going to use JSON, REST, GraphQL, things that they're used to build application. It has to be cloud delivered. And cloud delivered, I mean multi-cloud, not just the big public clouds, but it has to be delivered in the private cloud as well, right? Because it has to deliver availability and scale. And Cassandra is obviously the best database in town for that. But more importantly, it has to be serverless, because you do not provision to peak, right? You provision to what you need, when you need it, and then you move on. But lastly, it has to be something that's open source, right? Because in this day and age, you cannot make a decision thinking twice about lock-in, right? You have to be able to have the choice of giving you all the agility, the cost savings, the developer productivity, the availability, but at the same time, you should feel like you don't feel you're hostage to any one technology or to one particular company. So we've actually done this now. We actually started building out the open data stack concept in June of last year. And we've now spent a bunch of time talking to a bunch of our customers as well as new folks, and people seem to love it, right? A good example is Home Depot. During the pandemic, right, their in-store traffic dropped significantly, right? So with Cassandra and DataStax, Home Depot was able to launch curbside pickup in less than 30 days. For those of you that live in the US, right, 30 days for a company like Home Depot to do it throughout the US, right, is a very short amount of time. How did they do this, right? They had an open data stack, a completely open stack that was based on Kubernetes, which gave them the ability to go really fast, right, but maintaining scale and availability. So it increased their sales by 100%. For the record, Home Depot has been at 100% availability for 3 years straight, right? That comes from using Cassandra and working very closely with DataStax. So the good news is, with all this new stuff that we're doing, our short-term and long-term goals are the same, right? Deliver products that developers love and that change the trajectory of the enterprises they work for. And along the way, we're having a lot of fun doing it.
Very good.
So my turn, Sandeep. When somebody asks me about Open Data Stack, I get really passionate about it. I feel I have to talk about it. My turn to ask you a question. As you talk to clients about their modernization strategy, and you and I have talked about that for quite some time, what specifically do you see as their focus, and what are you hearing about when it comes to data?
Right. So Chet, as you know, we broadly work across 3 industry segments. We work across technology companies such as yourselves, developing products for companies like yourselves. We work with banking financial services organizations and then healthcare life sciences organizations. As we go and meet with our counterparts in businesses there and the IT organizations, there are 3 challenges that they talk about, or 3 areas of opportunity as we see it. One is dealing with the data monetization. As you rightly said, the amount of data that is being generated, it's paramount that we make sense out of that data and are able to monetize it in the business context of our customers. Now, to give you an example, one of our customers is a leading mortgage processor here in the US. We have seen and we have worked with them on building a highly scalable cloud architecture, which processes a huge volume of different kinds of data, but helps them monetize it in different cuts that can be used by different entities, which are businesses in adjacent industries. To give you a second point where we are seeing an industry trend, it's about leveraging AI to basically drive operational efficiency. So look at companies like a Bay Area global leader in networking, where we have been working with them to reduce their call center rep load by up to 30% by bringing in AI-led case deflection. And that's a great use in customer service, right? Yeah. The third trend, given the industries that we deal with, the banking financial services industry, the healthcare life sciences industry, is obviously around the security and compliance. In the banking industry, for example, GDPR, CCPA, those are the kind of issues. In healthcare life sciences, 21 CFR, Part 11, HIPAA, and the allied related issues are what we hear about. And that's where we have been focused on helping our customers solve these things.
That's awesome. That's awesome. I mean, it is funny. It is great to see that AI is not just theoretical, right? You have taken it in practice and actually helped the bottom line, right? And I think the world needs more and more examples like that. So that's awesome. Great work. So what are the critical success factors for modernization, right? You get a chance to see lots of companies across many verticals, across many geographies, right? Is there something that you can tease out and say, here are some critical success factors?
Sure. So keeping it very simple. So we are looking at, the speed to execute. So it's basically the faster time to value. You can't have programs today which are multi-year kind of a thing. Everyone is now used to the agile ways of working. Everyone is used to the app-based work. So we are looking at faster time to value, working with organizations over months to start realizing the business value. Second is the agility and the flexibility. Today, everyone wants to be dynamic. Today, the decisions have to be made quickly. We have to, we have seen in COVID times, things need to change very rapidly. And we have to have the flexibility to move up and down the consumption in line with the business requirements. Last but not the least, all of this has to be done while making an impact on the OpEx and creating a bottom line impact from doing all this. So that's in a nutshell what we listen to from the business leaders, what we are helping our customers realize, and that's what is keeping us and our customers successful.
Do you find Sandeep, there's some common characteristics or attributes or behaviors of the business leaders that are more successful than others?
Right. So the business leaders we have usually seen be more successful are people who are able to decide fast. They basically believe in something like perfection is the enemy of execution. So it's about, at times you will not have perfect information, but you should be able to figure out the trends by looking at the high level information and keep moving. Yeah. And then again, it's about failing fast, failing cheap, rather than, embarking on a huge discovery before you kind of take decisions. So those are some of the things that have been common trends we've seen across people.
And do you feel comfortable with your relationship with some of your customers, that you can talk to them about that and saying, maybe you should move faster? Because I think of that as a true partnership, right? Where you can
Right.
tell somebody that they might be wrong, or they should take a different approach.
So Chad, you'll be very surprised. A lot of customers actually like that. A lot
Yeah.
of customers want people like us to be leading from the front, challenging the established, thought process. And that's where they find it refreshing when we come back and challenge them, and they are very receptive to it.
That's awesome. That's awesome. It's great stuff, man.
So Chet, now switching gears a little bit. You host a podcast called Inspired Execution. Tell us a little bit more about this and your key takeaways from talking to many business leaders that you've done over the last many months.
Um, Thanks. First of all, as we've talked about this, right, we should definitely have you on the episode. And if it makes sense, we should have you and Anand on the episode. It'd be great to host both of you. If you're lucky enough, the best thing that can happen to you is you love what you do. And the second thing is you get a chance to do it with great people. Right. I've had the great privilege of working with many great technology leaders, and I learned from them every day. Right. I had a conversation. There were two conversations I had yesterday that were actually from two people that have no idea that they exist, but the conversations were very similar. Right. So, and one of the things that actually occurred to me was it would be great if we can take all these folks that I meet that I'm truly inspired by, and find a way to make their advice available to younger versions of themselves, and younger versions of everybody else, right? And people who want to listen. So we actually decided to do this podcast, and it's a short podcast, works out really well. I didn't want to call it, it's actually a lot about leaders and leadership, but I didn't want to call it leadership because I think leadership is actually about great leadership is about execution. It is about outcomes, right? It is not about leading. It's leading towards something, right? And that's why we decided to call it Inspired Execution. The one thing I will tell you that is common across all of them, and something that I've used for a long time, I've always said that real leaders in a phase move the human heart. And what you find across all these podcasts that we've done, that the best leaders find a way to execute by moving their hearts. In a company, you already have people working with their minds, but how can you inspire them from their hearts to be something bigger than they are for a mission that is beyond themselves, right? So IEP follows a person's journey, advice that they would give to yourself. It's mostly just hanging out and talking to people I know and getting their perspective. But there's a lot that I learned even at the podcast, right? We talk about speed, we talk about D&I, we talk about patience and impatience, things that leaders have to deal with. So it'll be an absolute blast to have you on the podcast, and we'll make sure that you join us for season 3.
Look forward to it, and well said.
The last question is mine. So let's, you lead teams in different functions and different verticals, including technology and healthcare, right? So just a couple of, these are standard questions I would have at the IEP, but just for your audience. How do you describe your leadership style?
Sure. So it doesn't matter what business you are leading, and today it is technology, tomorrow it could be oil and gas or whatever it is. Some other things, at least that have worked well for me personally. So I'm a pretty hands-on guy. I lead from the front. I'm in the trenches alongside the team where required. While at the same time, I love giving people space, delegating and empowering them the same way as I have loved in my career journey, being brought up by leaders who at times, even if they didn't agree to what I was doing, gave me an advice and said, final call is yours. And at times when I did not agree, even then I went back and I decided maybe that person is right. And 50% of the times I went back and corrected, and 50% of the times I still did what I wanted to do. So I believe in that. I believe in, empowering people and letting them utilize their creativity. so that they can also learn from their successes and their failures. The other
Give them
thing,
enough, you give them enough rope to hang themselves.
absolutely. And, if they hang themselves, they learn, they will never do it again. But if they do it better, maybe they can do it better than what I would have done otherwise. So it's
I agree.
benefit of both the sides.
Agree.
It works well.
That's awesome. So, what is the one piece of advice that you would give to a younger version of yourself?
So the piece of advice that I would could give to a younger version of myself is the piece of advice I would give to an older version or the current version as well. And I'll explain why I say that. So I very sincerely believe you have to stay hungry and you have to stay foolish. You have to have the curiosity. You have to push yourself to the limit outside of your comfort zone. If you keep working in your comfort zones, you will not go anywhere. You'll reach a certain level and you'll plateau. You have to absolutely push yourself, and you can always do better than what you did yesterday. So you just tell yourself that and keep pushing along.
Yeah.
Second, you have to be empathetic to others. Whether it is your team members, it's your customers, your partners, what goes around comes back. Not necessarily from the same folks, but if you do well, if you're empathetic to people, it basically expands their, thinking about you, and it helps you somewhere or the other. Finally, you have to, keep your say-do ratio as one. Say what you do what you say, be transparent, your teams will trust you, and that is the equity that nobody else can bring for you. That is where what I will say to my older version, younger version, and whatever else.
That's awesome. For all the IEPs I've done, I've never, you're the first one who said karma is a real thing, which is the second point of advice you had. So I think that's, I have a different way of saying it. I talk about everybody you see on your way up, you're going to see on your way down. So, kind of like, but it's the same concept.
Yep.
We use different words, right?
Yep.
But basically, at the end of the day, be good, be nice, be helpful, right? And do it not because it'll come back to you, do it because you should want to do it. And then everything kind of sort of just works out, right? Hence the word karma. So
Perfect.
This has been, Sandeep, this has been absolutely phenomenal. And I look forward to spending more time with you, like tomorrow.
Sounds good. It was great to be with you, and we are all excited about our partnership and hope to see you in person sometime soon.
All right. Thank you. Take care.
Thank you.